Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our webinar. We are thrilled to share how New Mexico Highlands University has leveled up the student experience with a student portal and AI chatbot. Jumping right in, I welcome our esteemed speakers for the webinar. Adele Ludi, Interim Director IT at New Mexico Highlands University. Jarod Bonino, Director of Product Management at Unified. Kyle Stevens, Product Manager at Unified, and Christopher Uthe, Chief Product Officer at BlackBeltHelp. I would now like to hand over the platform to Jarod to begin this webinar. Jarod, over to you.
Thanks so much, Shristi. Shristi mentioned in the opening comments, we really appreciate you guys taking the time to join. It always means a lot when we have so many participants come and listen to what we have to say. As Shristi mentioned, my name is Jarod Bonino. I'm the Director of Product Management here at Unified. We have a few other folks at Unified that I'll ask to introduce themselves here shortly. But first, I want to turn it over to really our star of the show today to introduce herself, and then we'll get in a few slides, we'll get into an opportunity to learn a little bit more about the school she represents.
Thank you, Jarod. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adele Ludi, and I'm the Interim Director of IT Services at New Mexico Highlands University.
Great. Kyle?
Yeah, Kyle Stevens here, Product Manager at Unified. Been here over 14 years now. And yeah, we'll get into some of the demonstration bits as we go forward in the session. Chris?
Yeah, Chris Uthe here. I'm the Chief Product Officer of BlackBeltHelp. Excited to be here and coming to you from the wonderful state of South Dakota.
Awesome. Yeah, I think, good call, Chris. We've got pretty much I think most time zones in the U.S. represented here between Adele and New Mexico. I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. Kyle's in Cleveland. And Chris, as he mentioned, is in South Dakota. It's quite a diverse panel spanning most of the U.S. To deliver some content to you guys today. The format of this presentation will largely be a discussion between Adele and myself. Kyle will play the role of kind of man behind the curtain. As he mentioned, he'll be demonstrating some of the capabilities that Adele mentions her organization is making use of. And then Chris is our resident expert on all things AI. So when we get into the discussion regarding the AI chatbot, we'll pull Chris in. That's where our partnership with BlackBeltHelp, who Chris represents, really shines and can really be discussed best by him and his team as they talk about current state, future state, and where we're headed with AI within the platform. So we'll spend just a couple minutes touching on, for those of you that aren't familiar with Unified, we will reference just who we are and what we do. We'll touch up, as I mentioned before, on New Mexico Highlands University as well in a similar manner. We'll then get into the discussion. And as part of that, we'll do a quick high-level overview of the New Mexico Highlands University portal, showcase some of the features and functionalities that they have built within their student portal, and just have a discussion about their motivation to adopt a student engagement platform, what results they've seen, and perhaps what plans they have to further adopt in the future. We'll then shift gears a bit and talk about Hue, which is the NMHU name for their chatbot. So some nice personalization that they deliver for their students. It's a little focused on their brand and mascot. And then we'll open it up for any high-level Q&A and closing remarks that we have from the audience and then from the panel. So without further ado, we do represent Unified. If you're not familiar with us, we are a software company that was founded in 2003, so over 20 years ago, in conjunction with 14 universities of all different types and sizes. You can see a few of the organizations we work really closely with highlighted in this slide, including Columbia University, University of Texas at Austin, and Louisiana State University. And we were founded with a mission to help develop and make available affordable technology that solves common university needs. So we're not necessarily, or weren't at the time, looking to reinvent the wheel. We were looking to provide affordable solutions for learning management systems, student information systems, student engagement platforms, and really partner with schools to better understand where their needs were in the current market and what we could do as a technology partner to help provide those needs at an affordable price point. Over those last 21 years, we have built partnerships with 150 plus global universities. We have over 1 million global users using our products and services. We are headquartered in Miami with operations in Gurgaon, India. And as a overall parent company, just know that we are a profitable private equity owned with over 100 million assets under management. So quite a solid backing and a solid foundation for a pretty established 20+ year company. In terms of the services and products that we offer, this slide just highlights that we have solutions to solve a variety of needs, including authentication and verification capabilities. We do have a student admissions platform. We won't be talking much about that one today. We will be highlighting the student engagement platform, which is called Engage. We also have a student information system platform that we refer to as Manage. That's primarily leveraged in international markets today, not as much in the US market. And as we mentioned before, we'll also get into some of our AI capabilities, which we internally name Yoda, but obviously in external contexts that can be adopted to match the branding and terminology at each of our universities. So again, today we'll focus primarily on the first, third, and fifth bubbles in that slide. We'll touch on some of the capabilities built into Unified Verify. We'll spend quite a bit of time on Unified Engage, and then at the tail end of the presentation, talk in depth about Yoda. With that, I want to turn it over to Adele to tell us a little bit about New Mexico Highlands.
Sure. So we're a 4-year comprehensive university. Our main campus is located in Las Vegas, New Mexico. We have about 2,500 students, and we're the home of the Cowboys and Cowgirls.
That's awesome. I look forward to visiting you in Las Vegas, by the way, especially in the winter months here in Charleston.
It's a beautiful
Adele,
little town.
Yeah, I bet. We've had a great opportunity over the last couple of weeks as we prepared for this webinar to really just talk about your journey. I know you shared with me that probably about 5 years ago, you were an attendee at a webinar really similar to this one, where Unified was presenting, maybe perhaps alongside a current customer, what they had to offer and what they were providing. And I really just wanted to kick off our conversation today, just giving you an opportunity to just talk to us about your state of mind 5 years ago and really dig into what were the things that about the current state of New Mexico Highlands at that time that convinced you that you needed a student portal. I know in your situation, you were moving from a world where you didn't necessarily have something you'd refer to as a portal. So for context for the audience, right, for you, it was less about what do you need to switch to, and instead thinking, why do you need a portal?
Right. Well, there was a number of challenges that we were trying to resolve. I would say that the first was account security. So we were experiencing issues with compromised accounts. So student, faculty, staff accounts, they'd become a compromise, and then they'd be used to send phishing emails. We'd wind up blacklisted, and then we'd have to do a lot of cleanup work to resolve that. And so we wanted to enable MFA to have additional account security.
Awesome. And Kyle, I think you can tee up maybe just a quick overview of what that MFA looks like for NMHU today, and talk to us a little bit about the beginnings of Unified Verify and the capabilities it can offer for organizations that are facing similar challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. So Verify is an IDP solution, so an identity provider. It can also do provisioning, deprovisioning to other systems. It can also be a password management tool, as we'll see here, as well as a multi-factor authentication tool. So really a full IDP suite provided with Unified Verify. But as we'll see here, I'll try to log in with this account, and even though I'm using the correct credentials, right, it'll bring me to this secondary screen here. In this case, the user's already set up their different MFA channels. Right, but if this is my first time logging in, I'd have to, establish my email and security questions before I could go forward. Additional channels are also available. I believe there's a push notification example, and I believe an SMS as well. It just depends on which ones you want to configure to make available to your students. So here I'll answer the questions, and I should end up in the portal. So once we give the correct answers to the security questions, we can then go forward. We can set up as many security questions as we need to, and you can have the user have to answer X of Y questions before they can go forward, but that's up to each individual implementation. Does that make sense, Jarod, or you
That's
want me
great.
to show?
No, that's great. Yeah, maybe since we're logged in now, I think that it's important for the audience to know this is actually New Mexico Highlands portal experience. So this is the landing page. Do you want to give us a quick tour around? I know we're going to touch on some of these things more deeply, and I know Adele has some follow-up points to make, but let's set the context. Let's just give a quick tour of what we're looking at and what applets we're seeing on the screen here, so the audience can sort of orient themselves a bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
And let me just, oh, I'm sorry. I thought
Nope, go ahead.
that you wanted me to go over
Better
that.
to
Go
hear
ahead,
it from
Kyle.
you. Better to hear it from you. By all means, go ahead.
Sure. Well, and I just wanted to point out that the JDO account has a little bit more access than the average student, but we've got our left navigation with different resources for students, faculty, and staff to be able to get to different things. We've got a quick links area for those really common items that people want to get to quickly. One of them that we found was the like the password recovery settings. People wanted a quick way to be able to get to that. And we built this slider, this image slider that kind of catches your attention. We will feature a few different things through the year. If you'll scroll down just a little bit, Kyle. My app, so that's the applet that ties all of our applications together. And so again, the JDO account has a little bit more access. So like that help desk application is really for our help desk team. But the average student would see the Office 365, Brightspace, Banner, all of those common things. And we release applications by role through the setup for the apps. And so not everyone sees everything. Announcements, that we renamed the app for that, and so we will have different events and things like that. And actually, that was my my third point was the communications. We had kind of an issue with global emails. We were using global emails to send out announcements to students, faculty, staff. And I mean, they'd be events that, oh, there's going to be a movie or there's a Frito pie sale or something like that. And so they'd be very kind of short-lived in terms of relevance. And so people would get kind of frustrated that they had to go and delete a bunch of emails, or they may not be relevant to them. And so we really wanted a way to be able to share announcements and kind of let people choose what they wanted to see. And so with that Connect app, we allow people to set up their preferences, and then we post things based on preference. But while we're in there, so the second thing that we were really trying to do was improve our navigation of our technology environment. And Jarod, I think you have a slide on this, but just so you can kind of see how this looks now, we're tying everything together, the applications, the announcements, the various resources that we have, which may be technology or contact information or just kind of department general information. What we had before was this, and apologies for the image, it's not that great, but this was a menu that we had built in our Banner ERP system. It just had links to the different applications, and it doesn't look great. There's not a whole lot of branding there. It's, it'll do the job, but we really wanted to improve that that technology experience for our user community.
Yeah, that's awesome context, Adele. I really appreciate you sharing that. And those all sound like pretty motivating factors to dive in and find out what's out there that could help. So spoiler alert, eventually Adele and the team at NMHU did choose Unified, which is why they're co-presenting with us today. So I wanted to give you just a chance to talk about your experience with your partnership at Unified from 5 years ago through implementation of the project initially. What were your thoughts around that partnership, and what can you share with this audience about that experience?
Sure. Well, I will say, I'll start by saying inevitably things will come up in any project. This was a major project for us. And so we had some challenges. We have a small team. We had competing priorities. We experienced a ransomware attack during the course of the project. And so just, for various reasons, our project became delayed. We were initially supposed to go live in January of 2020, and we needed more time to complete the setup. We decided to actually go live in March of 2020, and then of course COVID hit, and we were moved to remote work. When that announcement came out within the university, our faculty asked if we could delay go live to a less impactful time. And so I would say that through the course of this project, and considering all of the delays, and of course we had to negotiate all of that, the Unified team was very flexible with us, willing to work with us, on that extended timeline. And on other things as well, just kind of like where we needed additional training or different things. Our team is very hands-on, and so we wanted to know how to do everything. And so sometimes that involved a lot of questions, a lot of extra meetings and things like that. And so in some ways we kind of created more work for ourselves, but I would say that the Unified team was there with us through the process. And that's specifically the implementation of the project. I would say that the relationship moving forward, we've worked together very well. If we have issues, if we have questions, the Unified team is pretty responsive. We've got a very good relationship with our CSM. I've got a connection to him on Teams chat. So if we need a ticket escalated, or if we have a question or something, I'll reach out to him, and he's pretty responsive.
That's so great to hear, Adele. I'm so glad the relationship was so positive. And yeah, I couldn't believe it. I heard on, I think it was Monday, was March 11th. And that, I guess, looking back, I don't remember that date specifically, but that, I guess, is the date that historically we look back, and that's when the US shut down travel for anybody coming in from Europe. And that's really when things escalated. So we're looking at almost to the day, the 4-year anniversary of that pandemic. And to hear from you that happens to be the point in time in which you were trying to make such a massive change within your organization, I can't imagine how difficult that must have been to be on the precipice of a go live and to feel like, okay, we have a lot of competing priorities here, some of which we have no control over. And I'm super happy to hear that through that partnership, you guys were able to find a path forward and find a date that was better suited to get this portal rolled out for you. Before I go further, this was inevitable, but I've already blown past one of my promises to our team here internally at Unified. Now that we've had a chance to hear a little bit from Adele about her motivation and New Mexico Highlands' motivation for adopting a student engagement portal, we wanted to provide a little bit of an interactive poll for our attendees today. So Shristi, if you guys can throw up a poll. We'd like to hear directly from you all. Are you guys facing similar challenges or any challenges in regard to your existing student portal? Or if you don't have an existing student portal, feel free to let us know that on this poll as well. Give you guys just a minute to click through that one. And we will have a couple more polls, assuming I don't blow right past those as well. I'll try to remember. Just to get the pulse of the audience that we have here and get feedback from you all about what kind of content is relevant for you. We just want to make sure that what we're presenting today is useful. And as Shristi mentioned up top, I'll just repeat, if you have particular questions, feel free to make use of the Q&A panel within Zoom. You can use the chat as well. You're not forbidden from using the chat by any means, but it's a little easier to organize and make sure we respond to all the questions if you use that Q&A panel.
Yeah, and Jarod, I think we'll have to revisit that chat question because I don't think my answer went to everyone. Hope you're okay over there.
No worries.
Yeah, we'll go through all the
sorry.
Q&A items towards the end, if that's all right.
Sure.
We'll kind of answer them all in a bunch.
Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, I think I've recovered from my coughing attack. Thanks everyone for the input on the survey. I think we can move forward with the next question for Adele. All right, so Adele, appreciate you speaking with us about your motivation and about the partnership during the implementation process. I'm curious, just to kind of cut to the chase, what types of improvements have you noticed within your organization or within your student engagement at your university since the rollout of that portal to your students?
Sure. So let me kind of back up a little bit and say that we implemented the Engage piece, so the portal. We implemented Verify for the authentication piece, and we did a number of other things as well. But we kind of look at all of it as one product. It all works together. So the biggest impact that I can see is, and I'm going to knock on wood because I'm a little superstitious, but improved account security. So the number of compromised accounts has decreased dramatically. And we had a really good run too for a long time of not really having any known compromised accounts. We had some more recent, more sophisticated attempts to actually send a phishing email and have students respond to it, and they provided, cell phone information, and then from there they were able to use that to ask for the code or whatever information to try and access the account. And so we did have a couple of compromised accounts, but compared to 5 years ago, it's a huge improvement. The other piece, I would think there's a couple other things. So we've had, of course, the improved communication to students in terms of the decrease in global emails. We've had better resources for like user self-help. So for them to be able to reset their own passwords and manage their account and not have to reach out to the help desk as much. Or if they reach out to the help desk, we're providing support in a different way and empowering them to be able to help themselves.
That's awesome. And I really appreciate the context of, these being disparate components that you adopted, but from your perspective, it's just one thing. That's a success on our part. We view that as by design. So we don't want you feeling like you're using 3 different tools when really all you're doing is providing your students with some authentication mechanisms into their portal, giving them that portal experience, and then obviously facilitating some of that AI-driven chatbot capability that we'll talk about here in just a bit. Love hearing about those improvements and hope we can continue to partner with you to realize even more improvements as we continue the partnership. We can move on to the next question. I wanted to give you a second. I think you've touched on one, but can you hit on, feel free to repeat. Just tell us, what are some of your favorite features within the Engage product itself?
So I would say for Engage itself, the Connect app. So the app for sharing announcements and events. I really like going through and seeing the different events that have been posted. And I've heard from different users across campus that in some ways they miss the globals, but not that much. And so they've kind of shifted their habits. Instead of checking the globals for the different announcements, they actually go through Engage. They have a calendar reminder, like every couple of days to go see what's been posted, and that way they don't miss out on any events.
That's really cool. Can you talk a little bit as a follow-up to that about, you guys have a cool implementation where you've sort of locked down the ability to post to that announcements area using Unified Connect, but you offer a way for people to make suggestions or recommendations for posts?
So yes, with the Connect app, I mean, you can grant access to different individuals so that they can post events or announcements within those different preferences. And we have a limited number of people who are trained to be able to do that. We want to have a certain level of control over who's posting because we want to make sure that anything that does have an image, that post meets ADA requirements. And so we have it kind of locked down, but at any time we could always grant access to more individuals. So what we have is a link to a form, and it asks different details about the event, and so people provide that, and then you can attach the image there. So we'll post all of that, and as long as
Kyle's
I'm not sure.
forbidden.
I'm not sure why that's the case, but users, like students, faculty, staff have access to be able to submit that. And yeah, it's been pretty effective. It hasn't been too much work on, it's the help desk team that maintains those posts, and it hasn't been a heavy lift for them.
That's great. Kyle, anything you want to expand on with the Connect app itself? It sounds like Adele's team's making great use of it. I know there's some capabilities for students to, subscribe to certain categories. Anything you can expand on to just talk a little bit about the functionality and how we've designed it there?
Yeah. I mean, so Connect is actually a part of our, greater overall messaging app. So our messaging app actually contains, 7 different delivery channels, Connect being one of those 7. Others are like push notifications on the native mobile app, emails, SMS, pop-up notification, right? Just depends on, what style message you're trying to get out to your users. And right, so you can send a message using Engage to one or all of those channels at one time, right? And so we can see any previous message that's gone out. We can see, a preview of what it looked like. But when we're drafting new messages, right, we can go through and get really granular with who we're targeting. So right, if we just want a push notification to go to a specific user group, right, these are normally fed through a school's Active Directory, right? We populate them with things like students, staff, faculty. Some schools have very granular user groups, others do not. For those that don't have very granular user groups, we can actually pull from like your SIS, where you may define more granular groups. But right, picking an audience first, we can even upload a list of users. So if you pulled a list from another system of folks that haven't, submitted a payment or something, right? You can go ahead and send a message just to the users in that list. Right, so we can go ahead, draft a quick message. We'll find this user here. Right, so we can basically just go through, pick a certain group or user, and then we can draft our message. And so that's when I said we can put a message on a Connect post, and it could also be a push notification and an email, right? So we can really hit all 3 of those channels through just a single communication, right? So we just go ahead, fill this out accordingly, and we're good to go, right? So this is the overall messaging tool, but right, you can also just use Connect itself, right? So if you don't want to teach somebody all of those steps, you can just use Connect, and it's super simple to post an item. So here I just go ahead and tag this message with, whatever it's related to. Maybe I have food sales and it relates to student services. So anyone that subscribed to one of these categories is going to see that post in their list. And I just go ahead, draft a message, super simple editor. I can tag a image or a YouTube video to be at the bottom of the Connect post. You can determine who sends or who can send under each one of these channels uniquely, as Adele mentioned. That way, if somebody should be managing the events but shouldn't be managing the lost and found or whatever, right? You can kind of delegate who can post under which one of those categories. And for an end user, right, they can opt in and out of these. Initially, when you first log into the system, it'll kind of ask you your preferences and what you want to opt in and out of. And then afterwards, you can just go through and update your preferences, and then the posts that show up within Connect will update accordingly. Anything else there, Jarod, that you wanted me to touch on?
That's
That was at
awesome.
least
No, I know we're straying a little bit from the script here. I don't think New Mexico Highlands is making use of groups, but I think it's worth mentioning that there's some additional capabilities on the platform that allow you to set up some virtual communities that your students can join if there are clubs or affinity groups or interest groups that your students are a part of. And the cool thing, the reason I want to bring it up now is I believe, keep me honest, Kyle, that you can actually set up a unique connect feed within that group that's really just confined to members of that group as well. So while you have this really cool global connect feed, you can also have some pretty localized ones that are applicable to subgroups within your school as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So like what you see here, Office of Student Engagement, once I come here, right, I'm only going to see the posts from the Office of Student Engagement. So, it'll obviously show up in my main feed on the homepage for all the different categories that I'm subscribed to or groups that I'm involved in. But once you go to this page, right, it kind of scopes it or restricts what's showing to only those that, match the group.
Yeah, that's cool. Thanks for sharing that, Kyle. We've seen a lot of success from schools that have struggled with, if you don't provide a way, students will find a way. So if there are interest groups on campus, chances are they're finding a way to communicate. That might be through Facebook groups or Google groups or something. And so our approach to that is it's far better for you to have access so you can continue to participate, monitor, moderate, keep tabs on, and just overall keep the temperature of the pulse of your interest groups on campus. So that's why we provide that native capability within the app itself. And it's just cool to see, universities not only leveraging Connect in a sense of like global announcements, but it's also in pockets that are applicable to those interest groups as well.
Right. And one thing I forgot to mention, for those that for those that leverage Connect where their students can post, so like that lost and found category, sometimes they'll open that up to like students to post under. We can enforce a profanity filter that goes on top of Connect. That'll it's preloaded with 4,500 different words, phrases, permutations of phrases, but basically just making sure that anything that goes through that Connect channel, meets your content standards. Also, we have the
That's
ability
awesome.
to and commenting within Connect. So I don't think we saw it within the NMHU, but within Mississippi College, they have the ability to like and comment on each post, which just again is another engagement opportunity and interaction opportunity for your users.
That's great. Yeah, I love that proactive moderation capability in terms of the profanity filter. And I don't know about anyone else on the call, but if you want to feel old, go look at a modern list of like profanity items that get filtered out. There's some that I don't even recognize, and I'm like, I didn't even know that was a bad term. So credit to the team that keeps up with that and keeps an ongoing list of things that we might want to make sure are actively filtered out so that we don't offend or even accidentally use messaging or terminology that's not public friendly for our student audience. Adele, I know we strayed a little bit. You mentioned one feature and Kyle and I ran with it, but any other features you want to highlight that you and your team or your students have really commented about or appreciated since implementation?
Well, just in general, the ability to combine everything within our technology environment and other resources, being able to combine them in one place and display them the way that we have has been really nice. It's a much more polished look than what we had before.
Yeah, love it. I mean, it's that last mile of student engagement is really where we specialize. And if we can pull together what is a lot of disparate systems and make them feel like one for your student audience, I think that's mission accomplished. That's really what we really hope to achieve is you guys can be as complex as you want behind the scenes. And to your students, you can present that unified front and really, no pun intended, and really give them an experience that they don't have to be a master of 17 tools in order to know how to access the content they need. All right, let's dive into one more question before we'll do another interactive poll. I know we're kind of teeing something up that you and I talked about, but can you share with this audience any lessons that you've learned since your initial launch of the Engage portal that might be helpful or relevant to share with this audience?
Well, I would say that go live for the most part went very well. So with our delays that came into play, we did a soft rollout in March of 2020. And so what that meant is we made the portal accessible. Our users could log in, they could access applications, although they weren't authenticating into the applications through the portal. But this would help them get their MFA set up and their preferences and things like that, and just kind of help get them a little bit more familiar and ease that culture change a little bit, right? And then we did a full go live in May, like right after final grades were submitted. And so what that meant is we did a cutover of all of our applications so that they were now authenticating through the portal. And so that went pretty well. Now, we didn't really take into account that students probably weren't going to log in for the whole summer, and then, probably not until the first day of fall semester. So we had a pretty high call volume at the start of the fall semester, and we got everyone through it. We had some feedback about MFA. So we initially, I think we required all 4 questions to be answered in order to get through MFA. And so users were not really liking that. So we adjusted it so that, only 2 questions were being asked. We made some adjustments as well to the rules, the policies for MFA. And then we had feedback about the content on the welcome page, because initially we had like a 3-column welcome page, and it had a lot of things on there. Is a little bit, yeah, there we go. And so it was kind of drab in a way. We also had our applications, the SSO apps, in the middle, and at that time the Connect app had a lot more announcements that it would display at one time. And so if you were on a cell phone, because we didn't implement the mobile app, what we did is we tried to make our actual portal more responsive, and so we shifted things around, so you have the before and after. We added a lot more branding, and so I think we made it it's the same product, we just made it more user friendly and more aesthetically pleasing, I think.
That's awesome. And yeah, I think this before and after is really demonstrating the flexibility of the platform, for one, which I appreciate. There's nothing wrong with your initial. It's a little data heavy. The information density is high. And I love the fact that you listened to your student feedback and you considered it and you said, you know what, they're accessing this from devices with smaller resolutions. How can we maybe, decrease the amount of information we cram into one pane and instead consider that streamlined experience? So I personally, might be subjective, but I love what you guys came up with on the right there. I think your portal looks really clean. So credit to you and the team for, first of all, having the skills to design what is a really great student experience, and for listening to your students. I think that, shouldn't be undersold. Is like part of this is giving you a platform to hear and respond to student feedback that you get post implementation.
But I would say a lot of that is, well, I was going to say,
sorry.
a lot of this is the team, right? Your project team together, you bring different stakeholders together. And so a big piece of that was bringing in a team member that had design experience and kind of understood some of those things that you should and should not do, and some of those elements of design. I am not a design person, so I was very thankful, very fortunate to have a person with design skills on my team.
No, love it. Yeah, totally. This is a collective effort for sure, and I'm with you. My design skills are minimal. I often tell Kyle, nobody's accused me of being a great web designer, so I depend on my user experience team and web designers pretty extensively on the Unified side as well. Cool. I want to make sure we give for our AI junkies on the call who are just saying, please get to the AI part. I want to hear about the chatbot. Tee Chris up. I promise that's next. Before we do that, though, I want to give my Kenneth and Tristy an opportunity to present our second poll for the audience. If you guys can throw that up. Cool. So poll question 2, this has been great. The goal of this session was really to hear from a single partner and customer about what their experience has been like with the Unified Engage platform. You've probably noticed that this has been a lot less about let's show you Engage and let's demonstrate every nook and cranny of Engage. And it's been more about what's been your experience. That's by design, but we are curious if your interest is piqued and if you'd like to see a more thorough deep dive about the capabilities within Unified Engage and perhaps have some conversations about how those could be used within the context of your university, feel free to let us know in this poll question. We just want to know and obviously embrace any opportunity to follow up and work with you guys to maybe answer any questions that are on the tip of your tongue as we've just given you a taste of a few of the features and capabilities available within the platform. Cool. And as you guys start to respond to that poll, let's transition. Adele, if you can just spend maybe 1 or 2 minutes talking about your use of Hue or your AI chatbot, and Kyle, maybe you can help orient where within the portal Hue is accessed. If you alt tab over to the portal experience, it's kind of hanging out in that lower right corner, so it's got this omnipresence for your students. Just talk a little bit before we throw things to Chris about how that's been received. What use do you see students getting out of it? Where is it really helping the most? And then we'll tee up Chris to talk about where we're headed with AI capabilities in the future.
Sure. So we wanted to provide information to students and try to cut down on the number of phone calls to departments that are providing student support. And so we reached out to several departments, asked them for their frequently asked questions and any possible responses for those questions. And so we built that information into the chatbot along with contact information for the department. We have not yet implemented an integration between our SIS and the chatbot. That we've considered as a future project. But for right now, it's really intended to provide information, general information to students. And so we used to review the unanswered questions and work on researching answers and creating the intents right within the chatbot. But actually development and editing of those intents is now supported by black belt support. So that's really helpful. Now we just need to submit a request for the changes. So we review the usage of the chatbot. We review the chat messages on a regular basis, and then we still have to go and gather the information to fill in. But black belt helps us with the creating and editing of intents, and students are getting a decent amount of use out of the chatbot, and they're getting good use out of it during regular business hours as well as midnight. I haven't seen anything for 2 a.m. just yet, but they're on there pretty late.
Yeah, it's becoming longer and longer since I was a full-time student, but I can remember some pretty late nights and getting frustrated back in my day with not having an outlet like this to get support when I needed it. So I'm really happy to hear your students are getting use out of it, and not just during the normal business hours that we're used to in the real world. Cool. I can't think of a better segue. Thanks for teeing up the conversation about Black Belt Help. They are a partner organization under the same ownership umbrella as Unified. And so I'm going to introduce Chris Uthe, who's the Chief Product Officer for Black Belt Help, to talk to us a little bit more about the AI chatbot and what his team's focus is these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Jarod. Thank you, Adele, so much. Adele represented, sort of an amazing base first step use case of a chatbot, right? What we call our frequently asked questions bot. And it's sort of that happy medium of, we know students have a lot of questions, and we want to provide them answers to their questions in a format that they really want to use, and at any time, at any place, right? And so students would rather, type their questions than speak their questions, and certainly would rather talk to an AI versus a human, which is not always intuitive to some of us, but is definitely the way things go right now. Our AI bend really started when when we evaluated as a company our end goal, right? Our big thesis project, so to speak, to say, what are we trying to get? What are we trying to do here? And the answer was, we need to give students the information that they need as fast and frictionless as possible. And we need to do it in a way that meets them where they are, right? And so that sort of directive started with providing, a lot of live human support, a phone network that's available, things like that, and started evolving into things like AI support. Apologies for my dog in the background. She's, of course, very angry. 1 second that we're on here. Sorry about that. And so we started evolving into AI, saying, hey, can a chatbot realistically start to provide additional ways to get that information at the right time in the right place? And the answer was absolutely. And it snowballed from there. And we've really been expanding our software offerings to fulfill that need. And so sort of as the slide here is showing, it's a living, breathing organism. And as Adele alluded to, we have a large team in the background that is constantly working with our customers to recognize, identify, and provide data into, making that chatbot experience better. We certainly started with sort of one way of doing a chatbot and have expanded from there. So if you want to kick to the next slide, Kyle. Some of the ideas behind the chatbot here are, we're not focused on the technology behind it. We're definitely not a company that chases the shiny bits and pieces, although those are super fun to play with. We're all about the value that we can add, right? And looking at the ways that higher ed views those values. And so, when somebody says, well, hey, do you guys use ChatGPT? Do you use Gen AI? And the answer is, we've got a multi-pronged strategy that generative AI can be an option in that strategy. We've got a sort of test going on right now with it as a final option. But in reality, when we look at the value that we provide, Gen AI doesn't provide as much value to our educational customers as intent matching does. It gives our customers more control and more security, knowing what we're going to be providing our students. Now, we are a company that loves the technology. In addition to just the value that it provides, we want to understand, what's new and coming. I could get very nerdy about all of the proof of concept projects that are going on right now between large language models and then actually developing our own small language model to say, hey, can we put the bumpers on and create a language model that does generative AI that we own and maintain in our own cloud, to walk away from third-party providers. Our research into how our intent matching works and whether we can merge additional things. But the end result is the technology that we use is multi-layer, and we go through multiple steps throughout the chatbot sort of discussion process to make sure that we grab and move questions around in the right places at the right time. So what does all of that sort of technical jargon boil down to is when you open your chatbot and you're going to ask it a question, we want to focus on identifying the question and getting the answer to them as quickly as possible. That may come from the chatbot. That may be an integrated answer. Adele alluded to the fact that they've got a future project that they're looking at of integrating into Banner. And that looks a lot like asking more personalized questions. What's my balance? What classes am I registered for? Is there a hold on my account? What's the hold for? Those questions can be specifically tailored to the person asking them. So we would go through an authentication process that matches your campus's security policy and come back with an actual answer. So, do I have a hold? No, you don't have a hold. I know who you are and I know the answer to that, right? Not just general questions now, focused answers. Beyond that, we start to escalate, right? And we say, well, the chatbot can't answer every question perfectly, even if we have great integrations into the SIS, the LMS, even a CRM. And so we get into escalating that to possibly a human counterpart. And the chatbot can always escalate up into a live chat situation. Apologies, I'm going to pick my dog up. For those that love dogs, This is a schnoodle. Deeply apologize for it. She is normally the quietest dog on the world. But anyways, so
She just
second
loves
escalate.
artificial intelligence, Chris.
She does. She is. We have 3 dogs, and somehow this one is the loud one because she's the smallest. So, so we can escalate up into a live chat conversation, and all of that augments into getting the student to the answer as fast as possible. We're not one of the AI companies that are going to tell you that we have the silver bullet and can answer every question, right? And Adele will tell you that they didn't set out to answer every question that a student has. They set out to shave off the top X% of questions that they know they have a great answer to, and the chatbot can be super helpful with, right? And the chatbot can embed things. It's not just text. We can embed videos and images and longer answers. And so we get into the ways that it can be super helpful without annoying your students and making them feel like we're trying to hold them back from getting live human support. A couple of things here, that are on the slide. I've touched on the integrations, and I've touched on the live human transfer. We definitely have multiple language support. And then, of course, we've got a load of reports and dashboards in the back end to show you, Adele talked about some of the usage stats that she's seeing when they're using it and how many questions that really help you understand, how your students are using the platform. One thing I did want to touch on here is you can see on this screenshot and some of the screenshots before some chips there. They're sort of showing what the chatbot is capable of. And these individual chips are such a small thing and such a large thing at the same time, because it's one of the best ways that artificial intelligence can both out itself as far as what it does and doesn't know, but also avoid a frustrating experience. Because students, as they start typing, those chips dynamically shift around, and as a student or anybody starts asking a question, we're going to run real-time intent recognition on that question, and we're going to start suggesting things that it might be able to help with. So it's going to show questions that it might be able to help with. And so at the beginning, you can see we've got all of these categories, but if you actually start typing, Kyle, you can type something like account. It's going to recognize that as a subject of an intent, and it's going to start moving things around eventually, and it'll show you different chips based on what you need. So that's a really great feature to sort of keep pushing things forward. If you want to hit the next slide. So this one talks about all the different areas. So, we provide a lot of, what's important to me is that you walk away going, chatbots should be able to help with a huge variety of things on campus. And the more offices that buy into a chatbot, the more useful it is, right? Having a siloed chatbot for individual offices is not a great user experience. So I encourage you to think about how far across the campus one can help with. And then the next slide shows what I think is probably the most unique piece of BlackBeltHelp's offering, which is we do not shy away from integrations. The more questions that we can answer in a personalized manner, the better off we are. It just provides a higher level of service to the students. So whether it's a CRM like Slate or Salesforce, or an LMS like Canvas, or your SIS, whether that's Banner or Genzabar or Workday or Oracle, we want to be able to go in and get personalized answers to those questions and bring them out and expose them and show students what they're looking for without making them go the next step, basically. I did want to answer a question I saw pop up in Q&A because it's kind of nerdy and I love answering those questions. Is this chatbot a generative transformer model, or is it trained on specific questions and answers? And the answer is that right now, all of our sort of publicly announced bots are trained on specific questions and answers. However, we have several in testing that include both. And that's sort of what I was talking about, that hybrid model. I think it's really important that we don't lock, as we move towards generative, we don't lock our education customers into only generative because it leaves a lot of things out of your control. So if you ever wanted to use generative with our particular platform, you may have the option to do that in the very near future here, but it would always be an option, and it would be a fallback option, right? Because some of the benefit is being able to control what that answer is, right? Adele went and found frequently asked questions with all of her departments, but also knows how those are going to get answered. And with a generative bot, you don't know how they're going to get answered. And phrasing and specifics matter a whole lot in higher education. It's critical that we, a wrong answer is much, much worse than no answer. And so we never want to put our institutions and our partners into a situation where we've got the wrong answer coming out of the bot. Jarod, I think that covers the high level things, unless you can think of something you want me to hit on.
No, I think that's amazing. I mean, I think you're right. I think the repercussions of AI hallucinations in the higher ed sector are something to be wary of. So I appreciate your conservative approach. And I would just echo your sentiment that in a world that's obsessed with who wins in a human intelligence versus artificial intelligence, the answer in the foreseeable future might just be humans that are augmented with AI. So I love that your approach is a holistic one and sort of doesn't attempt to eliminate humans, simply augment them with some sophisticated technology and capabilities. Great. So we are up against it on time. I want to keep Shristi to offer up one more poll question, or maybe two, that are related specifically to the chatbot. So here they come. Yeah, perfect. Two at the same time. So you should be seeing those surface now. And while you guys respond to, are you facing any challenges with your current AI chatbot? And would you be interested in a one-on-one session to learn about our AI chatbot capabilities? I see a lot of great comments, questions, and not just about Chris's dog, although your dog is always welcome on any webinar that I'm hosting. Chris, I'm a dog person myself, so the barks weren't coming through. I'm sure you were hearing it more than we were. But if you do want to hear more from Chris or our team on chatbot capabilities, please answer these questions. And while you guys round that out, I'm going to ask Adele to maybe give us a few parting thoughts. Like I mentioned at the top of the discussion, she was in your shoes 5 years ago. She was on a webinar hosted by Unified, taking a look at what Unified had to offer in the form of a student engagement portal. And I would just ask, looking back on the Adele of 5 years ago, what advice do you have for our attendees on the call today that they might be able to take away from this session?
So if I were in the same position as I was 5 years ago, I would move forward and implement. I would recommend including key stakeholders as part of your implementation team. So we obviously had IT, we included university relations, student relations, we had actual students. So consider your different roles and what information those people in those roles might want or need to see. And include a design person as part of your team as well. Again, you really want to consider the timeline for your project and how far you can kind of stretch your team so that you can meet your timeline and not kind of go too crazy with it. I would suggest, come back and evaluate how things are going, like after you've implemented, and see if there's any areas for improvement. Like as we mentioned, we made some changes to the welcome page to maximize the space without having too much information. We added that branding. Accidentally muted myself. One thing that would have been really helpful early on in the project that we kind of figured out somewhere along the line, mock-ups. Mock-ups were really helpful in kind of setting the expectation for how we wanted the portal to look. So kind of getting the information from our functional users to our team to the Unified team. So keep those in mind. What is your vision for your portal?
That's such great advice, Adele. Hey, we got 30 seconds left. I want to be mindful of everybody's time. I can't thank everybody enough for dialing in and sticking around, by the way. I see we have the vast majority of our attendees still on the call. I apologize that we didn't leave a ton of room for Q&A, but thank you for writing in. And I'm glad that we were able to get to at least some of them during the discussion today. I want to thank all of my co-presenters, especially Adele. She doesn't work for Unified. This is not her day job. And she took a lot of time out of her schedule to prepare with us and to present today. So I just want to say thank you to her and to the New Mexico Highlands team for making her available. We can't thank you guys enough. I hope this resonated with many of you, and I hope this is just the beginning of a partnership with most of you. Please feel free to reach out, and we look forward to speaking with you in the future. Thanks, everyone, and have a great weekend.